Hello, my name is Peter J. Ray. Today's topic is Resalest Remarkable eBooks 47. Thank you for watching. The first book today is The Quest for the Presidency, the 1988 campaign by Peter Goldman and Tom Matthews, 1989. Wonderful book. And this talks about this presidential election in 1988 and the different characters, the fellows who are trying to become United States president. George Bush, who won the election, was reelected. Bob Dole. Now I remember watching on television. They interviewed. It was in the primaries. They interviewed George Bush, and they said, "Do you have anything to say to Bob Dole before this certain primary?" And President Bush said, well, that he wished Bob Dole well, all the best. And then later they asked Bob Dole the same question. Do you have anything to say to George Bush before this maybe New Hampshire primary? And then Dole's response was, tell him to stop lying about my record. And at that moment, I knew that Bob Dole's campaign was doomed because he lost his temper, and it was kind of a nasty thing to say. Anyway, Pat Robertson was another candidate. Jack Kemp, who played in the National Football League for the Buffalo Bills and became a United States Senator. Mike Dukakis, who was the Democratic nominee and lost in the general election. Jesse Jackson. Al Gore, who later was nominated in 2000 and lost the general election. There was lots of negative campaigning. Dan Quayle was the vice presidential nominee under George Bush, and then Lloyd Bentsen with Michael Dukakis. Wonderful book. The next book is The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown, 2003. This is an amazing book. The people know it primarily because of the controversial issue about that there's the implication that Jesus Christ was married to Mary Magdalene, and as a result, the Catholic Church, I believe, ordered Catholics not to read this book, and that led people to wanting to read it. I enjoyed it very much, and I don't think the issue of Jesus and Mary Magdalene was really that. And that was one part of the book. There's lots of good history, religion, adventure, spirituality, the Catholic Church, the Priory of Sion, I'm not sure what that is, the Knights Templar, very interesting, these fellows who used to provide security for pilgrims who were going to the Holy Land, to Israel and Jerusalem, where Jesus Christ lived back in the Middle Ages. Plenty of secrets, the truth, London and Paris. Well, so anyway, Dan Brown's formula is, he writes a book that has adventure, going to different places, and then lots of history, and he does a good job. The thing that I thought was very interesting in this book is, according to this book, before Christianity in Europe, the people there was religion in Europe, and this religion, women were the leaders. And then when Christianity came, there was sort of a war to eliminate this previous religion. They called it pagan religion. And these women they called them witches. I believe this is the origin of witches. And they said, no, these are evil people. And actually they weren't. And chances are that religion was maybe better than the type of Christianity being promoted. Because of course Christianity the ideals of Christianity are tremendous, but the reality of how people have lived, how Christians have lived, and Christian leaders really has not been up to par. Very interesting. I really enjoyed the Da Vinci Code. The next book is All I Really Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten by Robert Fulghum, 1986. This is a nice book. It's pretty easy to read. It's short, and it has unique ways of thinking. And actually these things that we learn when we're in kindergarten, and that the author is implying are very wise, like taking a nap in the afternoon. Maybe that would help us if we got more, we could do that, or if we did that. And holding hands, and flushing the toilet, and different things, being kind and so forth, and really, really nice, because there's a lot of truth in this. Some of the things that we're taught, and we need to do as adults, very basic things in life, in behaving properly. The next book is Understanding the Filipino by Tomas D. Andres and Pilar B. Ilada Andres, 1987. This gift was given to me by my sister-in-law, Jerry Catolos, and, my brother-in-law, actually, and my sister-in-law, Estrella Catolos, in 1981. And I decided to read it because I was fully committed to living in the Philippines at that time. I wanted to understand Filipinos better. It's certainly important to know that. And, the importance of culture. I mean, the importance of family for Filipinos. Very, very important. The importance of tradition and the importance of the history and the Roman Catholic Church and other things. I really enjoyed this book. Very, very good, very nice book. The next book is Boyhood in Monsoon Country by Maximo D. Ramos, 1976. The author grew up in a small Ilocos, northern Luzon, Philippines town in the early 1900s. I found this a very interesting book. Plenty of nature, the great outdoors, simple pleasures, some book. Yeah, this is, wonderful, because, today's world, especially when I was reading this, I was living in Metro Manila, this huge city with so many people and so little nature. And so this is very appealing. And this is how people used to live. And some people still live in these remote areas, small towns or villages. And I think there's a lot to it, this, especially nature, and fresh air and more quiet. It's too noisy in the city. The next book is Alvedon and Other Stories by F. Shonil Jose, 1988. And my buddy Frankie Jose, this tremendous Filipino author, Life in the Philippines, The Rich and the Poor, the NPA, the New People's Army, the Communist rebels. And at one time I was inspired to join the NPA, although I never did. I was married, I had a young son, and I'm glad I did not, because now I'm very much an anti-communist. However, I do admire Frankie Jose. A lot of good people have gotten into the communist movement, and perhaps they have a role to play. And because the issue of poverty is important, and it's not good to have this huge gap between the rich and the poor. And everyone deserves a decent life. People don't deserve to be living in squatter settlements. It's just not right. The next book is Journey Toward Freedom, The Story of Sojourner Truth by Jacqueline Bernard, 1967. We talked about her earlier. What a story. True, very wonderful history, very inspiring. This African-American woman lived as a slave, and she saw the country change. She saw freedom and the Civil War. She worked tirelessly for her people, African-American slaves, and she saw the end of slavery. And, of course, the beginning of second-class citizenship, which went on for really 100 years, which was a shame. But anyway, it was certainly better than slavery, because there was more freedom of movement, and certainly a wonderful hero in American history, Sojourner Truth. The next book is I Heard the Owl Call My Name by Margaret Craven, 1973. Well, I read this book in English in first year high school when I was growing up, and I didn't understand anything in the book. Ha ha ha. However, I got a high grade, and now, when I finally did read it in 2009, I did understand it. It's the story of a young Catholic Christian priest who goes to live with Canadian Indians in a remote area. And he becomes friends with them. Wonderful. So this is, very good history and an interesting story about this fellow. And, in a different culture, teaching them, his ideas about religion. Of course, they had their own ideas already. So, I think it's very interesting when we can meet other cultures and learn about them, make friends, and have respect for them. Very often, there's been a lack of respect, which is really unfortunate, and needs to change. We need to have respect for different cultures. The next book is John Walker Lindh, An American Taliban by Sarah Jess and Gabriel Beck, 2002. This is a very interesting story. An American teenager who wasn't doing well, and you could say he was a loser because his life was not going well. Basically an unhappy young man, struggling in life, struggling with his, in school, and with his own sense of identity. Probably, I'm sure he was depressed. And anyway, he got interested in Islam and decided to become a Muslim himself. And his parents were very, they were very liberal, and I guess they thought it was okay. And then eventually he traveled to Muslim countries, and he actually traveled to Afghanistan and joined the Taliban. Good grief. And he had been depressed. And as I read this, I thought, well, this could have happened to me. He found a cause. And I think he found the wrong cause. And, wow, what a crazy, confusing, difficult world this is. But God is good. Now, the thing is, this John Walker Lindh, actually, when the United States invaded Afghanistan, he was captured because we went to war with the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. And he was captured. Now, for many years, he's been in prison in the United States. And as far as I know, he's still Muslim. But, he was, they had made war on the United States. And so he was decided, the United States was an evil country. Anyway, it was kind of a pretty sad story, but I wish him well, because these things, the whole Islamic Jihad movement is very compelling, very attractive, and people want, and he was accepted by these people. Very interesting book. The next book is Farewell to the King by Pierre Schoendorfer, 1969. Wow, what a book. This is a true story set in World War II in Borneo, which is a very large island in Southeast Asia. It's mostly Indonesia, but also part of it's Malaysia, and part of it is Brunei. Anyway, this fellow, his name was Leroyd. He was from Ireland, and he became a king among jungle people. He became a king in this part of, not all of Borneo, but a part of Borneo with this jungle people. Very tough times: war, death, rain, heat, bugs, illness. White man in the tropics. So I can't remember how he did this, but he must have had a strong will, and he came there and made friends and political contacts, and he became a king in Borneo. Just imagine. One very, very interesting history. The next book is On the Brink by Benjamin Stein with Herbert Stein, 1977. Well, this is a book that deals with the issues of our financial system and the economy. And it shows the devastation of high inflation. And the danger of today's banking system is that inflation is part of it. And high inflation can come at any time. Yeah, this is really why we need a new banking system, because everyone is forced to become a gambler and invest, get involved in investments in the stock market, whatever, and so forth. And that's a risk. We should, if people work for their money, the money should retain its value, but it doesn't. Every day, the value of money is eroded because we do not have a good banking system, financial system, and there is, people accept inflation because maybe it's not that bad, but there's always the possibility that we could have very high inflation, and that's when things are really bad. And when especially it's hard for older people. They can't work, so they're living off their savings and perhaps a pension and Social Security, and this is not good. And if their money is wiped out, what can they do? They can't work and make more money. So anyway, this is a very important topic. I hope that we can eventually have and I guess it's all spiritual because we have this system today because it involves monkey business. So individuals can get money. Basically, there's big bankers and people who make a lot of money in banking. Anyway, this is reality, and we have to. It's the way the world is today. The next book is Virunga, The Passion of Dian Fossey by Farley Mowat, 1987. Well, among Farley Mowat, he writes all these books about Canada and about the wildlife and the cold, remote areas, and mostly about animals and people. But this is a book about someone else, about Dian Fossey, who spent 18 years living in the Virunga Mountains of Rwanda in East Africa. She befriended and defended the guerrillas there. So that was her interest. This was her passion. These guerrillas, and trying to learn about them and make friends with them and protect them from the outside world, because their habitat was being reduced, and sometimes they were being killed. She was a very, very tough woman, very strong-spirited, and she was there from 1967 to 1985, a real fighter. However, she had her own problems. I think one of the reasons she did this is she had problems getting along with others, with human relations. So she decided to, she enjoyed being involved with guerrillas. And the thing that happened, so she had conflict with different people. She was a foreigner. I think she was American. And she was a foreigner in Rwanda, this small country in East Africa, very poor country, where they had this horrendous genocide, I think, after her death. And she was forever having problems with her visa, which she had to have. She had to be legal. And then at one point, she actually made friends with the president of Rwanda somehow. And he gave her like a lifetime visa. She wouldn't have to worry ever again about her visa. And she was like, wow, isn't this amazing? And shortly thereafter, she was murdered. And that was the end of her life and her work. And she was murdered because she made enemies in Rwanda. She was, it's a conservative, traditional culture. And here she's a woman who's very, very strong-spirited and throwing her weight around. And her priority was these guerrillas and not really the people of Rwanda. And there was poaching. I think she was killed by poachers. These guys who maybe they killed guerrillas for their fur. I'm not sure. Can't remember. Or they were. But anyway, very interesting book, and she lived certainly an interesting life. Farley Mowat did a wonderful job writing this book. Very interesting. The next book is Mitla Pass by Leon Uris, 1988. Very good book. Leon Uris is my buddy, like James Michener. I never forgot his book Exodus, which helped me in 1983. Exodus, the previous book, he wrote about the foundation of Israel. And anyway, ever since I've been a long supporter of Israel, the state of Israel, and the Jewish people. This book, Mitla Pass, deals with the Jewish experience in Russia, America, and Israel. Very inspiring. I'm a strong believer. You hear the expression anti-Semitism, people who are against Jewish people. Well, I'm a pro-Semitic person. I'm in favor of Jewish people because I think they're very talented. They believe in education. They work hard. They're very funny, good sense of humor, and I strongly believe Israel is a good country and the force for good in the world in the Middle East. And it's faced all these Muslim countries that have wanted to destroy it. So anyway, I really like Leon Uris, fine author, wonderful book. The next book is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, 1937. Well, it's a fairly old book. It's very good. The power of the mind, positive thinking, planning, action, cooperation, inspiration. And I wondered if he had met Paramahansa Yogananda, who is the founder of the church I'm in, Self-Realization Fellowship. Anyway, this is a book about positive thinking and how so much our problems we don't realize is caused by negative thinking. We think, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that, and we think, oh, I'm a loser, and so forth. And so his whole point is that with positive thinking, you can achieve in life a lot more than you thought possible, because so many times we don't try to pursue our dreams because we think, oh, it's impossible, we can't do it, I'm incompetent, I'm stupid, I'm lazy, all these different negative thoughts that we have about ourselves. So anyway, I highly recommend this book. It's helped a lot of people to be successful in life. The next book is Jarhead, a Marine's Chronicle of the Gulf War and Other Battles by Anthony Swafford, 2003. Yeah, this book is about the 1991, what they call the Gulf War. It was actually the first Iraq war when after Saddam Hussein had invaded, and Saddam Hussein, the leader of Iraq, and when Iraq invaded Kuwait in 1990. And then the United States, under the President George Bush Sr., and he organized a coalition and to drive the Iraq out of Kuwait and to liberate Kuwait from the Iraqis. So anyway, this is a book about this fellow. He's in the U.S. Marines, and they spent long months waiting in the Saudi Arabia desert, waiting for the war to start. And it was a quick, brutal, victorious war. The book talks about anger, violence, despair, and suffering, hard times. See, these guys didn't know. Actually, very few Americans died in the war. A lot of Iraqis died, actually. Kuwait was liberated. But they didn't know what was going to happen. So they were pretty scared, what's going to happen in this war. And so this is a book about that first Iraq, kind of a forgotten war now because it was quick. Later, with the second Iraq war, when the U.S. is ongoing, we're still dealing with it. The next book is Standing Firm by Dan Quayle, 1994. Or David Letterman. I shouldn't say this joke. David Letterman, the funny guy or the former late night guy. He made a joke. He said that there was a sequel to this book, Standing Firm. It's called Standing Firmier. Yeah, so I shouldn't say that because people used to made so much fun of Dan Quayle that people were so mean to him. He's actually a good guy. He was U.S. president, elected with George Bush Sr. 1988, served one term from 1989 to 1993, and so many people had so much fun being mean to Dan Quayle. And I have to admit it, I was one of those people because I was a liberal back then, and it was wrong. It was politics. He was portrayed as a dumb, rich, pretty boy. In fact, he was smart, hardworking, and a good man. He took the blows. Good guy. God bless Dan Quayle. And he's talking about his life, his experiences in politics, and especially, as vice president and working with George Bush. Wonderful, good guy. God bless him. The next book is The Boy Who Lost His Face by Louis Sachar, 1989. This is a children's book. I read it out loud to the summer school students at Resalest while they were reading out loud too. And the book talks about the trials of being young, trying to be popular. As they say in the Philippines, buhay. It has a happy ending. It's a good book. Louis Sachar is a wonderful children's book writer. So I recommend this book highly. The next book is Tarzan Alive by Philip Jose Farmer, 1972. Now this is just an extraordinary book. Really, really incredible. And according to this book, Tarzan was a real person. We know the Tarzan character, right, from, I think, 24 books written by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Well, according to this book, he really lived. It's a true story. And that Edgar Rice Burroughs didn't just make it all up. And according to the book, in 1971, he was still alive at age 84. He was born in Gabon, Central Africa, lived in England and Kenya, served in the Royal Air Force for Great Britain in the Second World War. When he needed money, he would go to Opar, the city of gold in Central Africa. And he was raised by the Mangani, supposedly a type of people that were not human, but were not gorillas. So something between apes and humans. So I don't know. I haven't been able to verify whether this book is true. And actually, at the end, there's all these references. I'm still interested to know. At the time I read it, I thought, my gosh, this is incredible. So I really recommend this book, and it's still a mystery. I'm kind of curious because I haven't seen any other references that Tarzan's true, or whether this Philip Jose Farmer just did a tremendous job of fooling people like me. The next book is I Have Lived Before, the story of the reincarnation of Shanti Devi by Sture Lunnerstrand, translated by Leslie Kippen, 1994. Well, this is a very nice book. This little girl in India remembered her previous life completely and found her former husband and son. So this book is proof of reincarnation. You know, she had remembered her former life, and she told her parents, all about, she knew the name of the town, and she knew all the details, and she says, I have to go there. So they finally, the family brought her to this place, and that, apparently she had died. Well, she had died, her former husband was still alive, and her son from a former, and so it was very interesting. And and I believe reincarnation is true. And actually, if we, many people believe that God is unjust. They think, oh my gosh, all the things that are happening, why do bad things happen to good people? Well, with reincarnation, we can say, in past lives, good people did bad things, and that's why they're suffering now. So God is just. There is justice in the world. So, and books like this prove reincarnation is true. And it's still controversial. Many people will not accept it because it's not believed by Western civilization. But the Hindus believe it, the Buddhists believe it. So this is an interesting topic, reincarnation. The next book is Dork in Disguise by Carol Gorman, 1999. This is a children's book. I read it out loud to our students. Very good. This character, his name is Jerry. He wants to be popular, but he becomes bored with the popular kids. He loves science and his non-cool friends. Very, very interesting. Yeah, I remember when I was young, high school, I wanted to be accepted by the cool kids. Never really was. And but anyway, and it just goes to show, that what's important is character. Not popularity. Of course, we're influenced by our culture and our age group, and so this is an important thing. We should accept who we are, be happy with who we are, enjoy our friends, and find good people in life, and not necessarily popular people. Good people. Maybe they're not well known. Very interesting book. The next book is Easy in the Islands by Bob Shakochis, 1985. This book has short stories about the Caribbean. In one of them, there's a guy in Miami who gets arrested, jumps in the ocean. He swims to a boat that has Haitian refugees, and he comes to shore by a rich hotel and gets help from an old girlfriend. So that's kind of lots of stuff going, lots of adventure and action, other ethnicities, and I really enjoyed this book. The next book is George Bush, Dark Prince of Love, a novel, a presidential romance by Lydia Millett, 2000. Now this is a pretty crazy book. I wrote in my book diary that this is a terrible book. I did laugh a few times. Anyway, this is kind of a very creative book. This woman is in love with George Bush Sr., who was president. And she's character is poor, fat, smart, and crazy. And so, anyway, she developed this obsession where she was, in love with President Bush. So, and wrote a whole. And anyway, this book is very creative. I thought she did a good job. And interesting story. The next book is There's a Boy in the Girl's Bathroom by Louis Sachar, 1987. I read this out loud to our students. Very touching story. Beautiful. This kind, loving school counselor really helps a troubled student. Yes, so this is more another book, a children's book about young people and what they're going through in school, the challenges of childhood, and then a kind adult who really is very helpful. This is so important. We need to help young people to get through the challenges of childhood. Louis Sachar is a wonderful, tremendous author of children's books. The next book is That Night, a novel by Alice McDermott, 1987. This is a very interesting book. It's a novel set in the 1960s in suburban Long Island, New York State. And actually, New York City is in the western part of Long Island. Very nice suburb. In the story, a teenage girl gets pregnant. She's sent away because the family doesn't want this to be public knowledge of her pregnancy. And then her boyfriend comes, and there's violence. It's a sad story. So this is kind of troubling. And but it deals with reality. We all need to face reality. The next book is Everyone Else's Parents Said Yes by Paula Danziger, 1989. This is another children's book. I read it out loud to our students and really enjoyed it. I think they did too. There's a boy who is obsessed with his birthday. He makes fun of girls. So, good children's book to deal with, the consciousness and the reality of children, what they're going through in life, because it's very important to understand children, try to help them. The next book is My Heart Will Cross This Ocean, My Story, My Son, Amadou, by Kadiatou Diallo and Craig Wolf, 2003. Now the author, Kadiatou Diallo, she's from Africa, from Guinea in West Africa. She married young. This is the story of her life. She became very wealthy and in Africa, lived in Liberia, Togo, and Thailand. So she was getting around all over the world. Now her son immigrated to the United States, and very tragically he was killed by the New York City police. She's a gentle, peaceful, strong woman, the author. She lost her son. And this became big news because this fellow, I think he came home from work, and there's all this crime in New York City, and the police don't know who the criminals are. And this fellow, they said that they thought he was out, I think outside of his apartment building, and they thought he was going to get a gun. And then so he was shot many times, shot and killed, and he was completely innocent. It was really something. It became big news. Really too bad, because he was a good guy. He's this African immigrant, and trying to live in his life, and was shot and killed by the police. Tragic. The next book is Mr. Dream Merchant by Errol J. Bailey, 1988. A wonderful book. These are African-American characters fighting alcoholism and despair with Alcoholics Anonymous. So it's promoting AA. There's plenty of spirituality, hard work, and hope. Making dreams come true. So the author, Errol J. Bailey, did a wonderful job. It appears we're out of time. Live long and prosper. May the force be with you. As Scarlett O'Hara always says, tomorrow is another day. I hope you find a good book to read. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.